Anthony leaned back in his chair and thought with a smile that finally his dream had come true and his restaurant was considered one of the best in the city. But how long it took him to achieve this. Today there are the best staff, stylish interior and the most exquisite kitchen, but 10 years ago Anthony started with a simple snack bar near the local market. His grandfather helped the novice entrepreneur with his startup capital. He sold his summer house and gave the money to his grandson, believing that he would be able to use it properly and multiply it. Later, Anthony opened a cafe near the railway station, and then some more, until he ended up owning the best restaurant in the city. Loud voices over the door distracted Anthony from his pleasant memories. 2 waitresses were loudly complaining, and from their conversation, Anthony realized that the recent problem had arisen again. He went to the window and saw that an unkempt-looking old woman was standing outside near the entrance to the restaurant and was staring at the windows of the hall, swallowing hungry saliva. "And where are the guards looking?" thought Anthony irritably. "Should I really have to deal with that by myself?" The woman had come to their restaurant more than once before, and Anthony was afraid that her presence would frighten away the rich clients, and that was not to be allowed. The man did not want to make a fuss about his restaurant, but the problem had to be solved somehow, so he called the police. The police officers arrived and took the woman to the station. She did not even try to resist, and Anthony thought for a moment about what had made her sink so low and lead a vagrant lifestyle. Suddenly he remembered his grandmother. She was a kind and very neat woman who, together with his grandfather, had brought Anthony up since his 5 years of age. Anthony's father died in a car accident, and his mother disappeared some time later, and his grandparents said that she had gone somewhere and left him with them. Soon the grandparents decided to move to the state capital. Anthony remembered how he resisted, because he thought that his mother might come back and not find him. And then the grandmother couldn't stand it and told him that his mother had died of alcohol. The elderly woman sobbed after these words, and Anthony was unable to come to his senses for a long time. He could not believe that he would never see his mother again, as beautiful and cheerful as he had always remembered her. At that moment, the grandfather gave his grandson a big hug and promised that he and his grandmother would always love him and never leave him. Anthony suffered for a long time remembering his mother, but over the years the pain subsided, and he almost completely forgot his childhood grief. And his grandfather, as he had promised, always supported him in everything. When Anthony had already opened his first small restaurant, grandmother and grandfather suddenly passed away in the same year. However, Anthony had his own family by then, and this fact helped him to overcome their passing. He married the most beautiful woman in the world, Molly, who gave birth to a son and later a daughter. The man wanted to name her Charlotte, after his missing mother, but remembering her fate, he changed his mind. Now the children were all grown up, and the eldest son was even thinking about marriage. Family was the most important thing in Anthony's life, but he also held the business firmly. And from the height of the years and achieved results, the man believed that his life was quite successful. For a whole week, that woman was not seen near the restaurant, but one morning Anthony decided to walk around the building to check if everything was all right, and suddenly saw that homeless woman near the service entrance, and next to her, the new cleaner, Tara. She was looking at the old woman pitifully and handing her containers of hot food. The old woman carefully took the food and thanked Tara. The young woman was about to hand her some more bread, but then she saw the boss's irritated face and was dumbfounded. "Tara, explain to me what's going on here," said Anthony in a calm voice, struggling to keep his composure. "I'm sorry. Please don't think anything bad. I didn't steal the meal. I bought it from home. I just felt sorry for her," mumbled Tara, stammering at each word. "Did you feel sorry?" shouted Anthony in a fury. "And did you think about how our visitors, our respectable people, would feel next to this woman in ragged clothes?" Tara blushed and lowered her eyes, clutching the piece of bread that she had not yet given away. Meanwhile, the homeless woman tried to explain that Tara was not to blame for anything, but Anthony only squeaked squeamishly and then suddenly grabbed a piece of bread from Tara's hands and rudely threw it into the elderly woman. "Eat it and never come in here again," he shouted. "And you, Tara, if you ever let yourself do that again, then you can look for another job." The cleaner nodded her head in fear, while the poor woman picked up the bread and shook the dirt off it. "Any sorrow can be eaten with bread," she sighed, and thanking Tara once more was about to leave. Anthony, who was almost at the door, suddenly froze. He turned to the poor woman and asked her to repeat what she said. She turned around and, looking at the man with an incomprehensible look, repeated the same phrase again. "I've heard that phrase before," muttered confused Anthony. "What's your name?" he asked, and when he found out that the poor woman's name was Charlotte, the man went pale. It was his mother's name, and he had heard that proverb exactly from her. It was probably the only case he remembered from his childhood. His mother was a saleswoman at the time, and he, a 4-year-old boy, had run into the store with a hurt knee after a fall from a bicycle. His mother cleaned his wound, and to calm him down and stop his crying, she cut him a slice of hot-flavoured bread that had just been brought from the bakery. That's when he heard her saying about bread that could help with any sorrow. He asked then how it was possible, and his mother, smiling, explained to him that bread could make a man full, and thus he would feel better and forget his sorrow. The boy remembered his mother as she was that day, beautiful, with naughty curls and kind eyes. He remembered that proverb as well, and until today he had never heard it anywhere else. The flood of memories made Anthony's eyes tingle. Although there were many coincidences, it simply could not be a truth, because his grandparents could not deceive him by telling him that his mother was dead. Meanwhile, the woman had already turned to leave, but Anthony, as if he had woken up and without knowing why, asked her to go with him into the office. The woman was surprised that a few minutes ago this angry and rude man had sent her away, and now he was inviting her into the restaurant. Tara looked dumbfounded at her boss too. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I couldn't control myself. Work is nervous. Let's go. I'll arrange for you to be served properly," said Anthony, and led the woman inside. When he appeared with her in the restaurant, all the staff froze, not understanding what happened to their boss. Not long ago, he ordered to chase the woman away, and now he took her to his office and ordered to bring a complex dinner there. Anthony himself did not fully understand what he was doing. He tried to convince himself that it was just his childish dreams, that his mother would one day return, when in fact his mother was dead, and it was just a homeless woman. He just gave in to the impulse, and kicking this woman out now was no longer an option. So he was determined that as soon as she finished eating, he would give her money and ask her not to come here again. When the woman had eaten, she thanked Anthony and told him that he reminded her very much of her son. To the question of where her son or any of her relatives were, the elderly woman said that she used to have both her husband and her son. "My parents are long dead. But my husband's parents were alive and well and occupied high positions. My father-in-law was in the city administration, and my mother-in-law was in education. They didn't like me right away because they wanted another wife for their son, not such a commoner. Then we had a son, whom we called Anthony, and all was fine until the moment when my husband died in a car accident. Anthony listened to the woman and realized with each word that her story was the story of his parents. Meanwhile, the woman continued her story. As it turned out, immediately after the funeral, her husband's parents came to her and said they were taking Anthony away, and they threatened her with trouble if she refused. She refused, of course, and it didn't take long before she faced the consequences. The revision of the store came, and although the documents said everything was correct, Charlotte was accused of grand embezzlement and sentenced to 8 years in prison. She was deprived of parental rights and never saw her son again. When she got out of jail, her husband's parents had already left town with her kid. Anthony asked for their names and the name of the city, and when he heard the answer, he was shocked by yet another coincidence. Now he had little doubt that his mother was sitting in front of him, alive, but the man could not get over the idea that his grandparents could have done such a despicable thing, and doubts crept back into his soul. Charlotte kept on talking as if she had been waiting a long time to vent her anguish. She said she had had to leave the city for her parents' house in the village. There she got a job at a farm where she stayed for another 10 years. But then there was a fire in her house because of old wiring, and everything burned down. The woman managed to save herself by a miracle. The neighbour took her in for a while, then advised her to go to the state capital to work in a textile factory. Charlotte was overjoyed with offer, since she was provided with a place to live, and she was not afraid of the work. But it all turned out to be a lie. Charlotte was forced to work in inhumane conditions with irregular hours. They were paying her a mere penny, and when she fell ill, they just threw her out on the street to die. But she survived and has been wandering around abandoned houses and basements ever since. After listening to the whole story, Anthony did not know what he should do now. He was still afraid to tell Charlotte that he was her son, because he was not completely sure. It could be that the woman was just a con artist who had somehow learned the story of his family. So he walked Charlotte out, gave her some food, and then rushed back into the office. The waitress had already begun to remove the dishes, and Anthony, grabbing the glass from which the poor woman drank and a spoon, sealed them in a bag and immediately rushed out of the building. When he got to the lab, he submitted the materials for a DNA test and waited for the result. At home, he told his wife about his doubts, but to his surprise, she did not doubt in the slightest that Anthony's grandparents could have done so. They didn't accept me right away either. They often told me that I wasn't a good match for you, Molly confessed. It can't be. Why didn't you tell me anything? Asked a shocked Anthony. I didn't want you to quarrel with your relatives because of me, shrugged his wife. While the expertise was going on, Anthony couldn't find his place, especially because the woman did not appear near the restaurant again. When the test results arrived and Anthony opened the envelope, he nearly lost his mind. Yes, Charlotte really was his mother, whom he had considered dead for most of his life. Now he didn't care what she looked like. He didn't feel the slightest bit squeamish, and prayed only for one thing, not to lose her again. But time passed and the woman still did not appear. Day after day, Anthony searched for Charlotte, and once he found a woman who resembled the description in one of the hospitals. The nurse told him that the unfortunate woman had been hit by a car and was hospitalized with multiple fractures. Anthony insisted that he be taken to her. When he entered the ward, he immediately recognized her. The woman was asleep, and her relaxed, pale face looked a little younger, reminding Anthony of his mother when she was young. "Mother," he whispered softly and gently touched the woman's hand. "It's me, your son," Anthony added in a shaky voice. "You? What are you doing here? I don't understand." Charlotte looked at Anthony and her face cleared. "It can't be. Anthony? Son!" Anthony showed her the results of the DNA test and told her everything. He confessed that he hadn't guessed right away, but when he heard the proverb about bread, he understood everything at once. The woman was transferred to a better clinic, and soon she fully recovered. Anthony took her from the hospital to his home, and everyone was delighted to see her. His wife and children quickly found common ground with Charlotte, and Anthony was overjoyed because finally his mother had been found.